what do we think is in store for the future of this new installment? So we're not wiping the slate clean. All of what's happened has happened in this new show, but it's a new chapter. So what could work within what's already been built for a new show, new characters that won't be inaccessible to new audiences, but that fans will know and embrace? If we have a Stargate universe tie-in somehow. The most interesting thing about Joseph Malazzi's post here is it ends with Chevron 8 is locked. So when you dial an address through the Stargate, in a 3D dimensional space, you have 6 points that make up that location. And the 7th point is the point of origin. So usually an address contains 7 symbols or 7 chevrons. And within the Milky Way galaxy, the gate addresses that Earth can dial is 7 chevrons. Are we dialing another galaxy? So when an 8th chevron is used, that's for dialing other galaxies like Pegasus and Stargate Atlantis. If it is a connection to Stargate Universe somehow, that required 9 chevrons because the ancient ship, the Destiny, was so far out. But of course, if anything having to do with Stargate Universe, that requires 9 chevrons. So the fact that he said Chevron 8 locked, it could also be symbolic. I do think it'd be interesting if there was any sort of connection with Stargate Universe. Joseph Malazzi has been great. Definitely follow him if you're a Stargate fan. He also shares lots of behind-the-scenes videos of the past Stargate shows and concept art and really cool details. And also just a fun account to follow. I'm super happy for him. I love what he said here in his statement. Super excited for anything that he can share about the show as they go into pre-production and during that whole process and afterwards. Maybe it's just symbolic that we're going in a new direction outside of our galaxy, so to speak, a whole new galaxy. I guess it would be kind of similar then to Stargate Atlantis in a way, but I think it would also be really interesting if it was a one-way trip. So I do have another tweet from Roland Emmerich. So obviously Roland Emmerich, he's an executive producer on it. He's of course the director and co-writer and creator of the original Stargate film starring James Spader and Kurt Russell. Beautiful film. Both he and Dean Devlin are listed as executive producers. I think it's in name as far as their involvement because they are within that existing framework, that existing mythology that started with the film and that was extended through the following TV shows. So a lot of those ideas from the TV shows began with the film. But he has to be involved at least to know what they're doing. I think they're probably in touch. And he also tweeted when the news broke, and he said, "It will take you 1,000,000 light years from home, but will it bring you back? Amazon MGM Studio has given a TV series order to Stargate for Prime Video." And that was his tweet. I think that would be amazing if those were the stakes. I mean, with the original Stargate film, Daniel Jackson was confident that they could return. Well, he was confident in that he was going to find a basis of reference for language and he'd be able to find the symbols that matched the address home back to Earth. He still had to do the legwork to do that. And I think for the show, they kind of expedited a lot of those things. They didn't have to do that every time. It would be interesting if they head back to the Ancients' original galaxy since the Ori have been destroyed. We definitely need to have some rich mythology. And what's always been interesting about Stargate specifically is the mythology about human history. And that was always something that was so fascinating. Even as the show progressed, a lot of human history and all these different cultures had this alien origin. And whether it was the Goa'uld or the Asgard, that was something so fascinating. And as it continued into other galaxies, then there was a whole new culture of history with how humans developed in the Pegasus galaxy. Something I would like to see continued is to have something that still connects us. With the Ancients, it is of course connected to human history and human development. I wonder if they're going to go there at first, because they're going to have to do it in a way, as they've stated, not be inaccessible to ones that don't know the history of all the previous Stargate shows. It would definitely have to be a delicate balance. And maybe at first, the characters are thrown into a new situation, new galaxy, and maybe later they'll introduce some concepts from that deep mythology that fans will recognize, but in a way that will be fascinating for new fans to grasp onto and be fascinated by. Of course, I would love more ancient lore. That would be awesome. And I just can't help but long for that resolution for the Destiny and for Eli, who's out there. That's another thing, too. I wonder if the show is going to take place in exactly our point in time now. Because that's another thing with Stargate that I always appreciated too, was that it was in our present day. It was in the late 90s, as far as our own technology, as far as the military and scientific advancements. That's where we were while we're exploring the galaxy and these other worlds and seeing what we can discover and use to the benefit of Earth. A whole new threat would be very interesting and a whole new galaxy. I really hope that we're going to see some of that episodic storytelling and exploration of different worlds within the galaxy. I want to have that mystery, that exploration of these strange cultures. And yes, done by characters that we like and that are so different from each other in their personality and talents and expertise. And if they can do that, I'd be happy. I do hope that we get more of a vibe that is similar with Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis, as opposed to Stargate Universe. Stargate Universe was definitely a different tone, a darker tone, and at times it felt like it was trying to be Battlestar Galactica. They eventually found their footing as far as, I think, the relationships between the characters. It did get better as the show went on. And the fact that Malassi said this was going to be a return to that wonderful sense of optimism and humor that we have loved about Stargate itself, that makes me more optimistic that it's going to strike that tone that's more similar to SG-1 and Atlantis. Hopefully this will be sort of like what Deep Space Nine or Voyager was to Star Trek. New setting, high stakes. I think with Deep Space Nine, there was a lot more philosophy. I like that. If we're going to a new galaxy, I would prefer them to be completely cut off from Earth. And that is something that I did appreciate. They did establish that you can't just dial and address so far outside your home galaxy without significant resources, significant power. So they did make it difficult. But even with Stargate Universe, they did have that connection through those communication devices. I did not like those stones, actually. I was not a fan of the communication stones. I think it would just be much more compelling if they didn't have any sort of connection. I think it would just raise the stakes, that mystery of how are we going to survive in this strange galaxy, especially if there's a new threat that they've encountered, and are we ever going to go home? But what do y'all think about cameos? I would love to see Eli again if they can make it work. For new fans, I think that would be really cool if whatever new team encounters the Destiny, that would be awesome. I think if we were going to see anyone, that would be probably at the top of my list, because that would probably mean we're getting an official resolution to his character arc, and that would be great to see resolved. I honestly think it would be neat if Kurt Russell or James Spader would make a return. If they could find a way to include them somehow in new roles. I would love to see that. Would love to see, of course, the familiar faces, if it works, of Dr. Daniel Jackson, Samantha Carter, obviously. I wonder if we're going to see Earth and maybe we'll see Atlantis. I wouldn't mind a passing of the torch series with the original cast introducing a new cast. They've done that so well before in the past. I would love that. We're going to have to start from Earth. We're going to have to start in a place that we're familiar with. A good jumping on point, I think. Earth would be a great point of origin in that respect. I don't see how they could avoid not including any of the original cast members of Atlantis and SG-1. That's the one thing about Stargate, is that they're going to have to strike to the spirit of, and it is these endearing, compelling characters, like 24 or 20 plus episodes a season, and you really got to know the characters across all of these vastly different adventures. Not only that, but also the team itself, the Stargate teams, see their interactions and how their relationships evolve. That is essential to make characters that we love. Honestly, I'm just super excited. It's not a reboot. All these characters exist in this new show. So the possibilities are really endless. And we have these creators, veterans of Stargate in the past, who love these characters too. They're the ones that brought them to life. They care about them. They invested so much into this universe. So the fact that this new show is in the hands of those creators that have invested so much time and that love the fans and have such an appreciation for them, I can't help but be optimistic for the future. As opposed to just having someone new, wholly unconnected or unfamiliar with the world. That's something that's happened before, or even if they say that they're fans, they have no experience in writing or showrunning, as was the case with Rings of Power, or what's going on with The Witcher and what happened with Wheel of Time. I mean, there's so many things. So that's why this just feels so different. These people have been interacting with the fandom all this time. During Stargate's SG-1 Atlantis and Stargate Universe's production, they've been in touch with the fans and they've been hearing our feedback. They've been hearing all of that and have fostered it. And from what I can tell, especially with Joseph Malazzi and Brad Wright, they know what fans have been saying. And it's so unusual to have that. It just feels almost too good to be true. Because literally everything that I've said about this show that I would want is happening. It's just incredible to feel optimistic about something, in particular about a new show and a familiar IP. Fans have been burned so many times, and this is the opportunity to turn a corner. They need the fans on their side. They seem to really acknowledge that just the way that this announcement was made for the fans, with the fans, definitely seems very different in how other IPs, reboots, and new shows have been handled in the past. So that's cause for a little bit more optimism than I would normally have. I know people will see Amazon and immediately be concerned, but all of the information that we've seen about the show and its concept, who's involved and what they plan to do, how much the fans mean to them, I think it could only better Amazon's bottom line in the long run to just make the fans happy. And if you write a good show, new fans will appreciate the writing, the world, and go back to those other shows that made it what it was, hopefully.